Okay, recording has started, and let's get this zoomed in a little bit so that it's a little easier to read on stream. And I think that's that. I think you might be the only one showing up, Nelson.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. Oh well. It happens. Pretty much everyone seemed to have something for this particular weekend, but I wanted to have something during August, and this is the last August weekend, so.
Yeah, that's fair. It's always hard to coordinate these volunteer sort of things.
Yeah. I mean, based on the schedules that everyone put, like this sort of timing on this sort of Saturday is supposed to be a good time. It's just,
Right.
yeah, that one had a wedding, that one had his wisdom teeth needed pulled out. I'll be honest, that sounds to me like someone digging around for excuses, but no judgment if it's real. All right. So normally at these meetings, start off by reviewing various things from the last meeting, but the last meeting was a year ago, so we're not going to bother with that. And that particular
Okay.
meeting was barely slapped together anyway. So skipping number one then onto number two. The state of the game. Just wanted to go over a little bit of what's happened over the last month or so. Um, we have managed to keep the monthly weekend leagues running for 2 months in a row, so that's good. There's actually one running right now. Started on Thursday, it'll end on Sunday my time. So I'm glad that that is continuing on. We definitely need to keep those up. When we had those running and when they were a mainstay, the PC formats were steadily starting to creep up in usage. In fact, at their peak, I think that we were almost approaching like 5% of games played or something,
Hmm.
which is huge, for a bunch of formats that we ourselves invented. But since then, things have steadily dropped down. In fact, let me take a look at the stats right now. So Fellowship PC block is creeping up towards 1%. Probably as a direct result of the current PC block or Fellowship block league that is currently running. People practicing for it. And then people still playing the playtest ones. They don't realize at the moment, I think, that playtest has nothing in it that's not in production. But I'll take what I can get. Um, yeah, and movie is way down here. It's not really. Wait, where did? Oh no, never mind. Regular movie is not too far behind Fellowship. For a little while, movie was actually doing so well as a PC block that it was taking chunks out of regular movie block, and it was dipping down in the numbers to. Actually, that kind of looks like what's happening now, but that may just be a quirk of what's of the stats. Anyway,
I'm just looking at the stats now. It looks like movie block is listed twice and fellowship block is listed
yeah, and
twice.
so the reason for this, a little while ago, I saw that hey, the block isn't capitalized. I'm going to go in and recapitalize everything,
Oh, okay.
and not realizing that the stats go based on name because none of our database stuff makes any sense. That sort of change should have updated like a an existing ID as opposed to a or it should have just been a label that was attached to an ID as opposed to
Right.
actually based on the name that I put in there. So, yeah, next month the ones without the lowercase b should drop off, and then they won't show up anymore. But
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, that's stupid and annoying.
Yeah, it's all good. Little fixes.
Yeah, I keep running into little things like that I'm like, okay, a whole other system I need to rewrite so that that sort of thing isn't possible. But oh well.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you got your hands full with other stuff anyway.
yeah. All right. So, anyway, so monthly weekend leagues, those are going on. Set V1, shout out the past, we finally got that out and released. A lot of the drag here was my doing, doing all those last minute tweaks and so forth. But it's now out there. It's there. Congratulations to everyone that worked on that, especially to Finarfin for his long suffering in the development process. But we've definitely got V2 to look forward to, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The GIMP UI, obviously we have released a big old release that overhauled the game UI, and I will be eventually going through and trying to perform the same thing to the deck builder and eventually even the game hall itself. But the game hall is going to be significantly more difficult. It's got a lot of moving parts, and none of them make any sense. So that's going to be a giga project. But it needs to happen eventually anyway. I still, even though I am pretty proud of the way that it came out visually, I still at some point do want to hire an actual CSS expert to come in and clean it up, give it a good color theme, give it a good, once over, and fix anything that I might have overlooked. So um, I I'm waiting to do that though until I have done a CSS overhaul on these two, so that any changes that they make we will immediately be able to take and just copy paste across the entire thing instead of this current patchwork situation. Anyway, the wiki. So way back when we first set up the PC, the wiki was supposed to be one of our big pillars, and it's still. I mean, it's obviously very functional. It does a whole lot more than the old wiki did, but there's still some very obvious things that need to be tuned before we can officially flip things over. Big one being that like all the set articles have. In fact, let me just pull it up and look at it. A lot of the set articles have wonky broken tables, and like they haven't been once over to actually clean up and make sure that they're readable and so forth. This one just has. Oh, this one actually did get it. Well, no, never mind. So this still has markup from the old wiki that doesn't work in the new wiki that need to be translated. Things like that. And then on top of that, there actually isn't even a Players Council article. So anytime that the PC is mentioned, it goes to a red link, which is kind of embarrassing. But so a bunch of little tiny things like that all need to be cleaned up before I think we can, in good faith, flip it over. Yeah, so that's one of the things on my mind. All right, so I've got this big long set of things for us to discuss. We can go ahead and start off though with Nelson.
Cool.
Sealed formats.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and just give us an overview of what they are. Like I'm still a little like, I don't know, flippy floppy myself on understanding exactly how it all works. So just give us an overview of what it is and how it works, and then talk about what it is that you want to do.
Okay, sure. Sounds good. So the sealed leagues on GEMP are basically you open up a starter deck usually and a number of packs, and then you build a deck based off what you open. And we've been using the same formats for as long as I've been on the site, which is probably close to 10 years now, with adding in a few things here and there. But for the most part, we're just using the same cycle of tournaments over and over again. We did recently introduce the draft option as well, where you pick one card from an option of 5 or 6, and then do that a few times, and you end up with a bunch of cards, and you build a deck based off that. So those are the two sort of main sealed leagues that we have right now. And in my opinion, I would like to spice things up and put the PC label on some new spicy sealed formats. And my reasoning for that is, well, first of all, we talked about potentially having a constructed PC tournament and a sealed PC tournament run every month. But obviously, due to manpower and just everyone's time commitments, it hasn't been possible yet. So I thought I'd try to give that a shot and contribute in that way. So I'm hoping to set up some new sealed leagues that will spice up what's been offered recently and give people some new tournaments to enjoy. The reason that I think sealed is the way to go in terms of bringing in new players is that they're usually more basic than constructed leagues because you're just using a lot of common and uncommon cards. You open a bunch of packs, which is exciting. So there's that sort of feel to it of hoping that you're going to open something good, and that entices players as well. And then yeah, you don't need to know what the meta is for different formats or anything. I'm sure it would benefit to know it, but it's not mandatory, I guess, is what I should say. So it's a lot more accessible to new players, and you're not just gonna run into all these powerhouse decks that have been played for the last 12 or 15 years or however long people have been playing on GEMP. So yeah, I just think the replayability of these leagues is better. They're more enjoyable and they're more simple for new players. I think we're also getting new players because of the Discord that's been set up, and also because of the Amazon series that's going to be coming out soon. and hopefully that continues, that we see more and more people coming in. So I'm hoping that these leagues are going to keep people interested in the game and keep people coming back. So my thought is to have one sealed league every month. Um, and it's one series, so 10 games that need to be played within a 20-day span. And that'll give everyone the chance to get their games in while also still participating in the regular tournaments that they'd want to play. And it makes it so that the casual player doesn't have to play a game every single day to get all their games in. So just a bit more accessible, and hopefully will raise participation. So I
What are
did
the
create,
stats now? Like how do they run? How do
in
they work?
terms of
Yeah,
like
number of
number
games
of.
and so forth.
I don't know if it counts the number of games anywhere. Oh, like for a regular sealed tournament though.
Yeah.
Okay, so normally it's like a 4 series tournament. So you have 10 games in each series. So most tournaments are 40 games total, and you have 10 days to get 10 games in for each series.
I
So
see.
40 days, 40 games. Pretty difficult to keep up with if you're more of a casual player. I know for myself, with having a kid now and various extra responsibilities in my life, it's getting harder and harder for me personally to even get games in. And I think I'm probably still more dedicated than a lot of the players. So so hopefully this one series and 20 games will help out. I also think that keeping it to one series is helpful because a lot of the time, if someone doesn't do well in the first series, they won't be inclined to continue on with series 2, 3, and 4. So if you just keep it to 10 games, it's a little more easy to keep everyone engaged for that short period of time.
I agree, and
Um,
that lines up with what we have done with the weekend leagues, because
mhm.
we have adjusted over time what we've done. And back when we had multiple series, like even just one series per day, it was a bit of a mess. When it was yeah, once we evened it up and just said, okay, set number of games over the entire period of one series, it's just simpler for people that aren't familiar with the lingo to get with.
Exactly, and it makes it so that they don't have to sort of set time out in their schedule. They can just get their games in when they have the chance, and it lets them engage with the cards whenever they want to and when they have the time to.
Right.
So what I did, I have a whole bunch of ideas for what we can do for sealed leagues, and I'm going to try to program them as best as I can. I'm obviously going to need Ketura's help on that if it's complicated. I don't have any background in anything computer related, so hopefully I can learn on the fly here and figure out what I need to do to make them work. But in terms of the ideas themselves, I have quite a few already, and on the PC Google Docs section, I've created a document called Sealed League Ideas. It's under the Events and Tournaments section. And basically, it summarizes the main ideas that I have. I have 8 or 9, maybe 10 ideas in there. Actually, there's quite a few I'm scrolling through right now. I think I have around 10.
Oh, I just
And
realized I forgot to share my screen here on Discord. So let me throw this up real quick for you.
okay, yeah, sounds good.
I've been recording the whole time and pointing at things, but all right, here we go.
So there we go. I'll join so I can actually watch what I'm looking at too. Okay, so the main two that I think I would want to start with are this sealed full movie multipath tournament, where it would be you open up one starter deck from sets 1 to 10, and then you get a booster pack from each set from 1 to 10, and then you can choose 6 other booster packs from any set in set 1 to 10 other than reflections. So it should make it so there's a lot of variation in what decks are chosen, but it's still going to be simple enough that there's not going to be overpowered decks. So you'll see lots of variation. It'll be an enjoyable experience with unique games. Um, and the hardest part to set up is going to be this multipath option for the sites, where you can have either a Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, or Return of the King site path.
That's actually
I
going to
think
be
we
the
have a
easiest
format.
because GIMP already supports that. So it's just going to be a matter of
Okay,
setting the format to use multipath instead of any of the other formats.
well, perfect. And that was what I was most worried about, is getting that set up. So that's awesome. So that's one that I really want to try out, probably either first or second, just because I think it's really going to bring a lot of excitement to the community and build a lot of engagement. And then the other idea I really want to do is basically opening a booster box and building a deck from that. So everyone would get 36 packs of Fellowship of the Ring, for example. And then you open up your 36 packs. There's a lot of excitement with that. Am I going to get good rares? What sort of synergy am I going to have? And then based off your cards, you'd build a deck from that. So uh, all the sites from whatever block you're using will need to be available to players. So, like if we're just doing just set one, then every set one site will be available. The common Frodo will be available, and the common ring will be available to everyone. And then you just open packs and build based off that. So I think these sort of booster box ones would work really well for all of the main sets. So your Two Towers, your Return of the King, Shadows, Hunters. So lots of different setups we can do for that. And then we can also do like a booster box for a block where you'd open, say, 18 packs from Fellowship of the Ring, and then 9 from Mines of Moria, 9 from Realms of the Elf Lords. And again, you can extrapolate that data for any block to make it a nice spread between the different sets. So just with those sort of ideas there, if we run one a month, it's pretty easy to fill a year already. Um, and then I have various other ideas that I've written down in here as well. Um, but I think the ones I talked about are sort of the main ones that are going to bring excitement in. So that's where we should start, and then we can work in some of this other stuff, like uh, similar to the movie multipath. There's a full expanded idea where you can take any starter deck from sets 11 to 18. Um, and again, you open up packs from every set, and you open up some choice packs where you can choose what sets you want your booster packs from. And so again, we'll have a lot of variation in that set. I know expanded usually doesn't have as much interest because a lot of people don't play past set 10, so it wouldn't be at the top of my choices for starting things off. But I know there's a strong expanded community as well, so I want to cater to them too.
Right.
Yeah,
And
so
what I like about the setup too is that it's because you've designed things from a block standpoint, it's very easy to get variety just by applying it to a different block. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
yeah, it's reusing existing design and existing. Well, I don't know if existing work is going to be right, but once we've implemented it for one, it should be fairly straightforward to go in and implement it for another. I've got up here the majority of the files that are related to sealed, and I haven't sat down yet to try and figure out what all this means, but I'm pretty sure that it's pretty much just a matter of defining what packs are, and then you go in and you basically just throw in some choices and things for people to go for. So I mean, it should be just basically a bunch of glorified spreadsheets, saying okay, players have access to this and they have access to that, and then it'll just take some playtesting to make sure we don't mess anything up. But it should be accomplishable. Like I don't think
Nice.
that there's anything big that we're gonna have to write. It's just gonna be using whatever already exists, or maybe inventing our own booster packs. Like for instance, when you were talking about having all the sites available, that sounds to me like a special booster pack that just has one of everything in it. That doesn't have any
Okay, yeah,
randomization, and so then they just get that and open it along with the regular boosters they've got. Uh,
yeah, that's pretty good.
so yeah,
Yeah,
I like this. I agree with you that I think that it would help tremendously to have a regular sealed event for people to use. If you could always just hop into GEMP and then always there on the events tab, we've always got some sort of sealed thing going on. That would be nifty.
yeah, that'd be awesome. And then I guess one more thing I want to touch on before I conclude my portion here is the idea of creating some cube drafts. So that's kind of it's not the same priority as just getting the basic sealed leagues up and running, but I think it would be pretty fun to create some sort of stacks of cards that become a cube draft, and the system would have to randomly pick, 5 or 6 cards to display at the same time, probably all free peoples or all shadow cards, so that you can build a deck with an accurate amount of each. But if everyone's presented with the same cube draft, they can create all sorts of different decks and go in different directions with it, but they'll still kind of know what they might be playing against. So just another variation of an option that we have. I think it'll take a lot longer to build a cube draft, and I'm sure that would probably need some code writing to set that up.
Well,
And
there's
I don't
already
know.
the existing draft, right? So
That's true.
I think what this is pretty much just coming up with a bunch of like custom boosters that only have these specific cards in them, as opposed to a random card. Um,
Right. Okay.
so
That's interesting.
there might be a little bit of work needed to be done, but it would be very tiny, I think. It because I think it slots into what already exists. Um,
Nice.
it would just be a matter of, like you said, designing them, and cube drafts can take some time to figure out. I know that there's a couple of them already floating around. There's one or two on the last Homely House that we link to every time someone asks about it on Facebook. So at least some work has been done on
Interesting.
that we could probably take advantage of.
Yeah, that'd be great if there's something that's already available and I don't have to think out what, 500 cards we should use.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Cool. Yeah.
awesome. I really like the direction on this. I think that after I have finished up the last few things that I've worked on the UI, my next thing that I'm going to do is diving into the sealed code here so that we can see what all is going to be involved. Um, and actually, as something that I would like to do with this that I've talked about in the past that I think dovetails with this nicely is I've wanted to make it so that um, for our weekend leagues, that one of the prizes that I wanted to make available was basically, instead of me going in and manually, handing out the full art cards, that we would have a booster pack that was essentially, well, I mean, I guess it could be a booster. I was thinking of just making it so that you would get to choose from among the prizes that have been offered in the past. So that if you missed your chance to get this full art from 12 months ago, you can go into one of these events and have your stab at getting the one that you're trying to find. And so whether it was a booster or an actual just straight up card choice, I think that that's something that could be used to help give these some incentive for the magpies among us that like to collect stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea for sure.
And then we could set it up so that it's something like, I don't know how placements work in sealed events, but we could um, tie it to top 10 or something like we do for the weekend leagues, or maybe just number of games played or something like that. And so as part of this, as I figure out what's going on with the sealed code, I think I'll also try to figure out the prize support to try and get that generalized, and then that'll be used for also the weekend leagues. So, all right. Well, anything else you want to say on this before we move on?
I think that's probably it. I'm sure something will pop into my head tomorrow that I didn't mention, but that's at least the outline for what I'm thinking. And I can always add in little extra stuff for people to follow up on in the future if needed.
Right. Okay. So that is, I had this open twice. All right. So that's sealed events. So we will. I guess next time we have a meeting, I'll call you in and see, what have we done over the last month or so. So we're just, but so far right now, the action items for this, I am going to. Okay, come on. Yeah, thank you. Grand old time for Google Docs to start freezing up. Okay. So Ketura will look into the sealed code to see how much work it's done, how to make new sealed events. Ketura will look into prize support with boosters of art cards. And then alongside that, we will get you caught up. We'll get caught up on how to I don't even know what they're called. So I will put together a document, a tutorial for how to edit those things, and then we have a couple of playtest GEMP instances out there. So we'll apply your changes to those playtest servers, and then we'll log in and we'll try to run a couple test sealed events and see
Okay.
if things work the way that we expect them to.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds good. And you can add me to have access to like the editing sections.
Right. So what's going to end up happening with that is you say you're not computer inclined. So I think what we're going to do is I'm just going to end up taking the files and dumping them into a PC folder somewhere on Google Drive, and then have you edit them, and then you just let me know when you've updated things, and I will manually drag them into GIMP and
Okay.
push them up. Because
Yeah, that sounds great.
the process otherwise is I think is not going to be accessible to you. So all right.
Yeah, as
So
simple it is for me, the better. So yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. No problem. That's basically my job, is making things simple. All right. So V2, set V2. I think it was tentatively called King of the Golden Hall. Fanarfin wasn't able to be here today. Well, he'll hopefully be here next time. But he had a list of things that he wanted us to kind of discuss and bring up and kind of air out so that we could start thinking about. So, first question is, what do we do with sites in V2? So, very originally, when we were putting together the idea of the virtual sets, it seemed very obvious that we were going to start with Fellowship block and then move on to Towers block and then move on to King block. We're still doing that. However, there is no Towers PC format. So what we're doing, and what we kind of decided to do a few months ago, was that we were just going to target movie with Two Towers themed sites. Um, but so, well, that last part is what's kind of in question here. Do we just bite the bullet and decide to create a PC Tower standard? Do we just make Two Towers themed sites that are really just King block, but they're associated with Two Towers theming? Do we hurry up and do the site rework that I've got down here and just slap the Two Towers theming alongside with that? Like, what exactly should we do for sites with V2? And I don't know. This is I think that this intersects with some other things. Like I mentioned, there's some things that we could do around sites that is really going to decide what we end up doing for this. So I think that that's kind of entangled with that particular question. Um, but yeah, I'm really not sure. And another option too is that we could just skip sites. I mean, that seems like a little bit of a bit of a cop out, and maybe not quite so fun for Fanarfin either. But I suppose that is an option on the table. But so just be thinking about that, I guess. And if y'all have any opinions after watching this video, or Nelson, if you have any opinions, feel free to speak up. But yeah, that's one thing to think about. Item number 2, Nates. Nates? I don't know how to pronounce it. Very much a reader, not a speaker. But so the Nath subculture, which was introduced in Two Towers for all those elves that show up at Helm's Deep, it's a little bit difficult to write cards that work for Naths that don't work for your standard Círdan, Legolas, Glorfindel, Elrond, Galadriel elves. And so he'd like to make an unloaded keyword that we could attach to Naths, and maybe even do a big ol' errata wave where we go and retroactively apply them to all of the existing Nath cards. Maybe even not just the elves, but even, I don't know, maybe we could take the opportunity to tweak some of the existing Nath cards to target Naths. But so the keyword Nath is a little limiting, because like just from a lore standpoint, that specifically means a particular kind of soldier from a particular location in Lorien. So I'm not too big a fan of trying to use that as a keyword. However, if we can find something that is more like knight that can be applied in multiple contexts, like it makes sense to have knights from the Second Age, it makes sense to have Gondor knights, it makes sense I mean, it would even theoretically make sense to have Rohan Knights or something like that. It's just generalized enough that you could apply it to multiple situations. So I'd like to see if there's something that we could, some sort of keyword that we could use instead. So I have some options here. Obviously, this isn't exhaustive. You know, there's something else that we might potentially be able to use. We could use something like skirmisher, soldier, combatant, warrior, fighter, sniper, swordsman, blade master. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of I kind of lean towards skirmisher myself, but I don't know, something like that. So if y'all have any opinions, I would very much like to hear. And if you have any opinions on on the errata wave, give us those too. I do think that it would make sense to try and carve out a subculture that is not you know, quite so broad and ridiculous. Elves in general are kind of overpowered, so it would be nice to be able to have cards that are not going to immediately boost the standard set of elves. And then item number 3 that Fenarfin wanted us to bring up, Ents. Do we want any cards for them, or are they too powerful in movie already? Now, I'm no expert on movie. I think that powerful may not be the right term. They are definitely resilient. They're definitely, you know, annoying to play against, especially in expanded. I mean, that's obviously not movie, but when you have a big old giant 9-person fellowship, it can be very difficult to get a wedge in. So as far as like making it so that there's no more cards for Ents, I don't think that that's necessarily something that you have to do. We didn't necessarily shy away from making cards for cultures in V. Well, I mean, I guess we didn't do Urukai, you know, because that was already at the top, and so we pretty much focused on things that were not Urukai for Isengard. So I don't know. I guess we need people that have more opinions on movie, that are more informed than I am, for that. So if you think that Ents are fine, then maybe we can just leave them alone. But if not, you know, give us your comments and thoughts on that. I do think that if there's something thematic that you come up with, Fenarfin, obviously, you know, we don't have to throw that out just because Ents are already powerful. You know, anything can be balanced. We just have to come up with the right way to do it. Ring Wraith. I'm happy to skip the culture in V2 as they weren't in Towers Block much, but if the group wants some, we can do it. I think honestly that your thoughts that you had on the Twilight Wraiths are going to be enough of an inclusion. Because I agree. I do think that is the kind of the direction to go. That since Towers didn't have a whole lot, the Nazgul didn't really have a lot to do in Towers. I mean, so that was pretty much just Decipher not having a whole lot of images to pull from, and I think that's fine. Not every culture is going to be focused in every block, so I think that's acceptable. Any big ideas for the rest of the set? We've yet to design anything concrete for Rohan, Shire, Unbounded, Ringbound Rangers, Knights, Raiders, Gollum, or Smeagol. Are there any big ideas that people would love to see? So this is basically just going to be digging down into, you know, any of the pet ideas that you have thought about in the past. And so if there's anything you've got that you want to start discussing, now would be the time to bring up cool big things. My only thing, which I have brought up in the past, but hey, since I'm the only one in the video, I get to express my opinion, is the Valiant keyword. I very much don't like the way that they handled Valiant. That they tried to use it as a generic knight option. They tried to make it just an unloaded keyword that was that carved out a subculture, but I feel like how they managed it was not great. I would like to see some stuff that plays with what being valiant means. And honestly, I think that we could use it as a sort of morale keyword that gets added and removed. You know, that you have an Eowyn or a Theoden that inspires other people to be valiant around him. But if they're hurt or killed, then other people lose valiant and lose the bonuses that come along with it. You know, if we have cards that key off of it, I think that would be a really interesting way to take the subculture and which more or less slots into what already exists. You know, you have some people, some versions of Eomer or whatever that are valiant and can't have that taken away from them. But then maybe we could also have Urukai cards or something that are based on doing something horrible or horrifying or strong, and terrifying the valiantness out of people. And I just think that thematically that's an interesting direction to take. Um, but that's my only real thought on um, these particular subcultures. But I'll think on that, and y'all think on that, and if there's any cool ideas, let's start discussing them. Because the year is almost out, so if I get the feeling that V2 is gonna lag behind V1 a little bit. We lost the first half of this year with me, but yeah.
My
Anyway,
apologies for jumping in here.
no, go for it.
Is V2 supposed to be just for towers block?
So that's one of the things that is a little finicky. We are targeting towers block concepts. Um,
Okay, but it's going to be for movie mostly.
yeah,
I get it now. Okay.
it's going to be mostly movie. Um, Theoretically, if we
Okay.
had a tower standard PC format, or if maybe we just decide to bite the bullet and say, okay, we will add a fourth format. That is, I don't want to say unequivocally we will never do that. Although I have said that in the past. But if it becomes too much of a sticking point, maybe we can make a PC towers format. Although then we get the question of, are we doing PC towers or are we doing PC towers standard? And that whole question, that whole
Right.
annoyance was why we didn't do it in the first place. Because I really don't want to have every single format have a PC mirror.
No, I think
Yeah,
that's way too much.
yeah. So
Yeah, okay. So we're just focused on towers concepts for movie block
right,
usage.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I'll put some thought into it when I have some time.
cool. Okay, so that's V2. Only action item on this really is for people to share their ideas, share their opinions on these items here, these 5 items or so. So if you could just post in that VSETs channel and let us know. All right, so this item, reworks. So right now, if we talk about PC efforts, there's a few different initiatives. There's the GAMP initiative that I mostly head up, that is just trying to improve the technology, and so forth. There are the VSETs themselves, brand new cards that we are adding. We have errata, which is going in and trying to perform balance processes on overpowered cards, and ideally boosting up underpowered cards as well. Um, and so there's one more type of thing which kind of intersects with all of those, actually, that I would like to have us start thinking about, and it's the idea of a rework. Um, and so this is supposed to be something that is a little broader in scope than an errata, which may or may not involve issuing new cards. So it like I said, it kind of intersects with all of these existing things. But they're larger projects that are about improving the game itself. So, for instance, as one example, um, we might start consolidating and unifying some of the rules that we have. Like, for instance, backporting the no ring bearer skirmish cancel rule into Fellowship of the Ring. It seems to me that doing things like that to try and make all the formats have a more or less cohesive rule structure would make sense. And there's a reason that such rules were invented, because there are some very annoying just concepts in the game that would be nice to get rid of. Doing things like spring cleaning, going in and the wording standards change throughout the game, and so it might make sense to go in and do cosmetic only errata that don't actually change how the card works, but updates the card's wording to match the what we're used to seeing on later cards. We did this a little bit with V1, and anytime that I have done an errata, I have done a wording update to try and match later standards. But so, for example, this is talking about things like, instead of every card saying plays to your support area, you just make it a support area subtype. little things like that that don't actually change how the card works, but does change how it's presented. It might make sense to try and do this on a broader scale without just waiting for a particular card to be addressed, saying, okay, we are going to go in and we are going to fix all the events to now display their phase as a subtype instead of what it does now. Things like that. But there's some other concepts of a rework that would be a little more involved and less cosmetic. So, for instance, we might decide, and this is something we have sort of discussed before, specific negative player experience (NPE) tactics and strategies that we just don't like. That their existence in the game drags it down a little bit. A couple examples are discard decks. We have extensively discussed choke in the past. Basically deciding, do we want that concept to still exist? Do we want that archetype to exist? And what do we do about it? I have mellowed a little bit on some of these concepts. I can understand that there are some people that like aspects of them that are not necessarily explicitly trying to troll. For instance, when I put out some polls months and months ago about choke, I did get some people back that were like, they really liked thematically what it was that they were doing, that they were trying to sneak their way to Mordor instead of, fight their way through. And I feel like we can take a look seriously at what these decks and what these strategies are attempting to accomplish thematically, and I think that we can address that. We can try to invent something that is actually more about sneaking, that does not, make things such a choke fest and awful to play against. But anyway, so that would be one type of rework, is to go in and try and once and for all say, okay, list out every single choke card. Now let's kill it or convert it to this new standard, whatever that is. And then, like I mentioned before, a general site rework. Sites are something that I have been mulling on for a long time, because I get the feeling that there is a system hiding, lurking in the existing site systems that would work for what everybody wants out of the site system. There's what we have now is a slightly hacked at piece of marble, and inside that marble there is a statue, and I want to draw it out. And so I have, I keep coming back to this because there's something about it that I think can be extracted, that can be built. It may be possible to do something that is going to end up being more of a version 2 look than okay, let me start over. This is, I feel like it's important, but I always have a hard time explaining myself. So we have the two different site path types. We've got the movie type and we've got the post shadows type. A lot of people don't like the post shadows type. There's a lot of issues that they had. I particularly like some of the things about shadows. Now that I've worked with it a little bit, now that I've done some of the expanded leagues and played with it, there are some things about it that are very appealing, just from a design standpoint, that I think were actually more or less the direction that the game should have moved in. The problem is there were so many excessive issues with the balance and with the site recursion and things like that it kind of turned people off from the concept entirely, and now it's rather anathema. But that doesn't mean that literally every decision they made was bad, just that there were a couple of big impactful decisions that dragged everything down. So there's sort of a continuum here of how we address this divide between movie and shadows. On the low end, we could just treat them as their own separate things. We could just continue to chisel away at little issues. We could for instance just look at all the site manipulation cards and say, okay, we're gonna not do away with site manipulation, but we're gonna make it a lot more accessible, a lot more fair, without necessarily being so redundant and ridiculous. For example, one thing that has been proposed is to make it so the site manipulation only works against your opponent's sites, much like most of the Fellowship site manipulation was like this, so that you could replace an opponent's site with your own, but you could not replace your own site with another. And so things like that, I think, would go a long way towards cleaning up what exactly has gone wrong. We could also continue to do errata on cards like Stuart's Tomb and Mythland and others, and just give them a region locking errata to do things like, okay, well, this only works in region 3 or only works in region 2, and just using that tool to make sure that you can't get hit with these sites repeatedly across the entire site path. So if we were to do that on the low end, then that would this is a low amount of work, but also a low amount of impact, where it would make expanded more appealing, but it would make it more appealing to the people that don't play it, which is kind of the nature of the beast. But I think that there is a grander direction that we could take this. I still think that we could possibly unify the site paths between Shadows and Movie Block, and come up with a way to just completely redo the entire thing. I have talked about this a little bit in the past of just putting together something that is kind of a blend of both worlds, where you have both your wild card Shadows cards mixed with your specific movie path esque individual site path numbers. But as I've thought on this, like there's I don't know, I'm talking about this specific thing too much, but I do feel like there's something here that we could work with, and this whole concept would go under the idea of a rework project, of some big thing that would get worked on and tinkered on the side for a while, until one day we would release it, and it would just go into effect for our PC formats, almost as if it were a VSet, but it would just be one big patch that made a bunch of changes. And there's some other examples of reworks that could be done, like the Shadows culture deconversion, taking all the post Shadows Shadow cultures, and rather than using Orc, Uruk-hai, and Men, split them back out into their more thematic cultures as God intended. But anyway, so I think that there are some various reworks that would make sense for us to start taking on, to start thinking on at least. And honestly, like, this is the sort of thing that I would like to head up if I wasn't doing 10 million things. So if there's any of these particular projects that appeal to you, let us know. If you have any specific thoughts on any of these individual sub projects, I guess, let me know. But I think that this is some sort of thing that we ought to be thinking about. It may be that we won't have enough manpower to work on it for a while, but I think that eventually we should be trying to set up one of these rework projects alongside the other stuff we're doing. And then, sort of related to both reworks and the release of V1, we have just barely started to introduce rule changes that are different from Decipher's game. About the only thing that we have done so far is that we have introduced the item keyword, which means both artifact or possession. But we need a place to put that info. We need to be able to link people and say, yes, this is a section under the official comprehensive guide that the PC uses. And so I have tentatively been just been calling this project Comprehensive Guide 5.0 in my head. On the wiki, there is a Comprehensive Rules 4.1, which I have been slowly adding to over time. The idea being that this is a single location to find every ruling that Decipher ever made, because they never produced a document like that themselves. Even when they as they went through the different versions, and Comprehensive Rules 4.0 actually removed a lot of rulings from past cards that were in 3.0, and I'm still tracking down all the individual things that need to be slapped in here. But so basically what this project would involve is taking this Comprehensive Rules 4.1 and duplicating it into 5.0, and probably cleaning it up a bit. There's some bad things about the organization, but then also just adding in the PC rulings and making it our official rulebook, that this is how we follow, this is what we do. This is largely just a kind of a bookkeeping thing that we need to do, but from a legitimacy standpoint too, this is something that's just going to be necessary for us to be able to say, yeah, we are the Players Council. We have a rule book and everything. Look at us. We're official. Well, not official, but we're the real deal. So alongside that, there are probably going to be two different documents that are needed for this. We're going to need the 5.0 that is literally everything, and then we're probably going to want a small Delta document that just has the differences. A while back, let me see if I can find this real quick. Oh, come on. This is not the time for Google Drive to be farting out on me. Oh, well. So a while back, way back when we issued our very first errata, I put together a document that was a PDF that looked largely like the. I mean, it was styled to look like a CRD, and I'll just see that in here. I don't. What on earth did I do with it if I didn't put it in here? Did I put it in errata? Nope. Okay. Well, at any rate, I don't have that to show off, but it was basically just a little document that said these are all the things that we are doing that are different. They defined what the PC formats were, they defined what the errata were for the specific cards, and it was just one thing to hand to someone that was familiar with the game once upon a time, but didn't know what the PC has done differently. So ideally, we should have both of those documents. And yeah, I just think that that's something that needs to happen. In other players committees, there are this is basically a department, right? You have the rules department where you have a couple of guys that are just experts on the rules that know everything backwards and forwards, and they maintain these sorts of documents. And they eventually are also the ones that come out with new rulings when a particularly finicky situation comes up and a decision has to be made one way or the other. If that interests you, if that sounds like something that you would be willing to head, then I would encourage you to step forward and start working with us, and we can. I mean, there's not much access or anything that you need. This is literally just a new page on the wiki, but that's something that we ought to be doing. Okay, and now for this last section. Ketura, me, has a lot of things on his plate. We have a gigantic Trello board that has 101 bajillion things on it. All of which, well, this is just the master to do. I've got a GEMP one that is separate that has way more items than this. Oftentimes, I find myself just sort of doing whatever strikes my whims, because that's, you're not my real dad. You can't tell me what to do. But I would like some input from the rest of you as to what my priorities ought to be. So that when I am in between sub projects and trying to figure out what to work on next, it would be nice to have, just some guidelines for me to look at. Obviously, this wouldn't be something that I am beholden to or anything, but it would be nice to reference it. So let me just list off all the different things that I have to sit here and choose between every time that I finish up a project and start deciding what to work on next. The Booster Pack Simulator. This is actually not something I've talked about with a lot of people, but I have a little application that is a website that allows you to go in and act like you're drawing a booster pack. It opens, like, I've often thought that this would be something that would be nifty and cool, just for people that really love opening up booster packs. It supports the foil images that we have on the wiki, so it's just kind of a cool thing. I should show it off and give you guys some screenshots. I should have actually had it open and available so that I could show it off, but hey. GEMP Hall UI revamp and the GEMP game UI revamp. Obviously, I am knee-deep in the Hall UI revamp. That's almost done. There's just a couple of things like the admin page that I need to finish up. So obviously the deck builder and the game UI are eventual steps that will need to be taken. The replay analyzer. I have often referenced what this would be, but have not really produced anything actionable from it. So I do actually have a replay analyzer that at least opens up the replays that we have and spits them out into a format that is much easier to analyze than the default replay format. But the idea of what this would be is that it would look at all the replays for a given format, and it would spit out a bunch of data that would say, okay, in this format over this month or whatever, these are the decks that won. And these are the cards in those decks that won. And so that we would ideally have some data that we could crunch that said, okay, this particular card has a 63% win rate. You include it in your deck and you have a higher chance of winning. This is tricky to do, but it's not impossible. Other games do this. The Hearthstone errata team, or yeah, the Hearthstone design team, they have their own tool for this that allows them to specifically see what the win rate of an individual card is. Things are made a lot more complex when you've got a shadow side and a free people side, and you don't always, you know, it. Your shadow side might suck, but your fellowship side, does all right and manages to win you the game, and that does complicate things. So a straight concept of a win rate may not necessarily be the right thing to base stuff on. But it is better for us to have some numbers than to have no numbers. And so this, I think, would be something that would ideally allow us to really focus on what to errata. Because up until now, and including what we're doing now, the errata cards that are on the docket, we have basically based it 100% on gut feeling. And it would be nice to actually have some numbers to look at, so that we can just look at the list and say, okay, this particular card is standing out as much more impactful than the cards around it. Maybe impact is the way to go as opposed to win rate. But anyway, so that whole project is a thing that I could work on, that I probably should have worked on already, but how it's prioritized is a thing in the future. The migration of the last Homely House and the old wiki. So those are still sitting on Kralik's old server. He had purchased a server with a Greek company, or no, I shouldn't say purchased. He rents one from them, and it sucks, I guess, to have this other thing that is just kind of out there. A little while ago, there was a big thing where their service was down or something. They did something dumb on their end, and so the last Homely House was down for a couple of days, and it impacted GEMP because the last Homely House is where GEMP got its images from. I have fixed that now so that the PC has its own image server that is served from our own stuff, and so there's nothing I think that these servers are doing that is necessarily impacting anything, except of course for the hosting of the websites themselves. Eventually, what I want to do is I want to get so right now we have two servers. We have a production server and a test server, and on the test server there are multiple different applications. We have the wiki hosted there, we have the image server, we have the file server of all the so if I come up here to files.lordoftheringsTCGPC.net, all these things are hosted on there. All the various things that I've shared, the archives. There are ways to get the card images in zip folders for people to hold on to and to have, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a ticking time bomb. I do not like having this stuff completely separated out, and if it breaks, then there's just nothing, like I don't know anything about these systems. They just need to be wholesale converted to use something that is within our containerization process that I understand so that I can document it. Even Kralik himself was he did not like any of the software. He had written half of it himself, but not the other half, and so it was just kind of a hodgepodge. I would like to have it in a more manageable form. This would basically mean that on the test server we would have two more containers, two more applications, one for the last Homely House and one for the old wiki. And then once we've done that, once we have actually controlled it, then that would also be the time that we would be set up to finally push the wiki itself to lordoftheringsTCGwiki.com and just have that directing towards the new wiki as opposed to the old. I've already mentioned that there are some things that need to be done to the wiki before we can really do that, but I do think that functionality-wise, this is a far superior option to what is on the other website. This one is kind of basic, as the kids say. Alright, so that's one thing I can do. Next thing I can work on, make formats user controlled. So I want to do a format overhaul so that rather than having, and in fact I can show you the exact file, there's a specific file in here called Lord of the Rings formats.json that controls what a format is. So here's Fellowship Block. It is called Fellowship Block. It uses the Fellowship site path. You can cancel the Ring Bearer Skirmish, so there's a bunch of options like this that are available to be turned on and off. And then here is the list of sets that are acceptable. Sets 1, 2, and 3. That's for the PC block, the PC Fellowship block, The definition is a little more complicated because we have the errata. So we have a mapping here that maps, card 17 to card 517, which is our errata for it. And so this is just saying, okay, replace all these cards with the errata versions. And then on top of that, we support sets 1, 2, and 3, and set 101, which is the VSET, VSET 1. If we come over to some of these other ones, we'll see that there are lots of other settings that can be set. There are some of these formats that are not actually shown in the hall. They are used exclusively for sealed events and such. There are some that have restricted lists. So this particular format, King Block, has a single restricted card that you can only have one of. The Hobbit formats have things like they have a restricted 1, restricted 2, and restricted 3 list, so that you can only have 3 copies of this card, you can only have 2 copies of this card, and so forth. So here's Highlander, so that that restricts it, so you can only have one copy of any card. So anyway, there's a lot of these individual options that can be set, even besides the sets that are there, the ban list, the restricted list. There's lots of different things that can be set about a format, but there is nothing in any of these definitions that is like out there. Like, you see this is not code. This is data. This is a glorified spreadsheet. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that what the format is something that is much more loosey-goosey and free form than what we have now, where you can only use this list, something from this list of these 24 formats or whatever. And so what I would like is to make it so that when you go in and hit create table, what it does is it pulls up a window that says, okay, what formats do you want to use? There would of course be a drop down box that has all of the that has all of the existing formats. But when you would click on a particular format, what it would do is it would autofill the form that you're seeing with all the preset options. So these are the sets that are allowed. This is the X list. This is the restricted list. Here's a bunch of check marks for individual rules. Whether it's ring bearer skirmish canceling, whether it's allowing ARBs, whether it's allowing this or that or the other thing. And it would allow you to really fine-tune what exactly you're doing. And then when you would go in and set up a table, it would of course say, that this is, rather than using, it would probably have it over here, and there would be a little link, and you'd click on it, and it would pull up the window saying these are all the changes to this particular format, and this is how it's being played. This would allow people that, even though we have added the description field, so that which people still haven't really gotten used to using yet, but right in here you could say, yeah, no GLR, or you could say, no discard decks, or none of this, none of that. I would rather have that be enforceable, so that, okay, I'm going to make my own custom format that is fellowship or that is movie block, except GLR is banned. You can do that. Cool. That's easy. You just go into the window and you check a couple boxes and it's done. And it would be in here very obviously that this is a modified movie block with whatever name they give it, and then you click on it and it gives you the window, that same window, telling you what exactly is allowed in that custom format. I feel like this will be the answer to having a bunch of splintering, like I was talking about with the PC Towers block or whatever. Like, somebody could very easily go in and say, okay, I'm going to make a pseudo PC Towers block that allows set V2 alongside it. Once again, they're doing the same thing that you do in here, just with a nicely polished form instead of this god awful mess. But I feel like that would be something that would be very useful to people. There's already been some people that have been a bit leery about the fact that PC Fellowship, for instance, includes set V1. I was a little shocked to hear that people did not want new cards, but whatever, to each his own. I would like for them to be able to play the way that they want to play, but I don't want to have to sit here and add even more ridiculous formats to this list, so I would like to make it so that people have the control to do what they want. And yeah, so from a technical standpoint, that's not terribly difficult, but it does take time. So that's one more thing I could be working on. A deck sharing subdomain that forks Rings DB and Thrones DB. So if you're not familiar, there are a couple of websites for the Lord of the Rings living card game and the Game of Thrones. I don't know if it was a living card game or a trading card game. Probably a living card game. But so these are deck building sites. They're more or less open source. I know that Thrones has some aspects to it that are closed source. But so the basic idea is that this is a place for you to build your deck and share your deck. You can see that there's a lot of nifty features here with the hover over. When I go to make a build, let's see if I'm logged in. I'm logged in on one of these sites. Okay, so if I go into my decks and I'm going to go ahead and make a new deck, you can, well, I guess in that one you have to pick your particular setup, but that's unique to them and not necessarily us. But then it's just a very nifty deck builder. I go in and say, okay, I want 3 cards of that, 3 cards of that. You can do your searches, your filtering, all that kind of stuff. I think that we need a deck sharing site. I have started to make inroads on being able to share stuff in GIMP. I have added the feature here that I can go in here and I can click on that. And where previously this would just be a bare list, it is now a hover over list that allows you to see all of the individual things that are in your deck, and you can leave your notes. And this particular thing, if I open up a private window that no longer knows that I'm logged in, that URL works. I can share that URL with anybody. This is just bare bones. This is just, making it so that it's not embarrassing. But I would like there to be a website that people could vote on decks. They could comment on decks. They could fork decks, which is to say that on these websites, you can actually take someone else's deck and you can copy it, or you can. Oh, nice. So they have a bunch of different export options and stuff too. But they have a way of tracking when a deck has been copied and when somebody has made modifications to it. So when you share a new deck, you can say, like, it shows that, oh yeah, this was forked from this original deck. So you can go look at variations of that deck that has been shared. And then you have, I don't know what people are doing sharing a bunch of these pictures, but you can leave comments. You can have stats like these nifty things that show variation between the card cost and the different factions that you're using. Like, being able to do that, I think, is super good. I feel like the only reason I'm explaining this is because I don't have someone else to go back and say, yeah, we know, dude, we know how deck sharing sites work. But if you weren't aware, I have crawled the deck tech site, the old deck tech site from the Wayback Machine. Unfortunately, I've lost track of the creator. He used to be on GIMP, but he has stormed off, so I have no way of contacting him to get the original stuff. But I was able to get 5,000 Lord of the Rings decks from scraping the Wayback Machine. That's a lot of information that I would really, really like to put somewhere so that people could stop asking, is Lothlorien really the best we've got? Because it sucks, I mean, I'm sure I don't have to explain this to you, but I will anyway, that having to come in here and the only way that things are sorted is by time, so that somebody has commented on it most recently. That is awful. It's atrocious. If I'm actually trying to find a specific thing, I could try to wrangle the search, but the search sucks, and about my only option is going to be going through here and reading everything and hoping that the person who originally wrote it put a pretty good title. This one, Customer Value Program. I have no idea what that is. Is that spam? No. Customer Value Program is just a whimsical name for this deck, and I have no idea what is in that deck based on that title. I'm just going to have to sit down and read it, aren't I? So, that would be a big project, but it's definitely a necessary one. We have so much stuff that it would be nice to be able to share and reference and link. That's the big thing. When someone comes in and says, where can I look to find decks? What they're really looking for is, they're trying to make sure that there is a community, that there's information that they can pull from. And right now, Lothlorien is just not. I don't think it does it. So that's another project I can work on. Next one, continue improving the GIMP card definitions. So this is something I will, of course, continue doing as the problem crops up. But the big issue is that GIMP card definitions. Let me pull up an example here. there are some things about this that I really want to change, and I have started to perform some changes. If you are familiar with what the definition used to look like, you'll probably look at this and go, whoa, that's changed. What I want to do is be able to nest definitions within one another. This, in particular, would make juggling errata so much less of a major pain. Right now, if I want to make an errata card, I have to go make a fake set. So, like for instance, set 51 is the errata set for set 1. I have to do all the garbage that is associated with creating a new set, and then I have to go in and make a card. I have to keep track of the fact that this particular card, so this is Aragorn, Heir to the White City, like it is ID 5338. I have to keep all that separate. I have to make sure that I don't mess up my my naming conventions here, and then I have to go into the actual definitions, and I have to say, okay, we're banning. Well, okay, I guess Dubisty did make it a little bit easier for that, but I do have to go ahead and indicate that, okay, this card errata is that card, this card errata is that card, and that is atrociously tedious, and it is very error prone as well, because not only are there regular errata sets, there are the playtest errata sets. So in actuality, there are 40 BS sets that only exist so that you don't accidentally run into a card in a format that you're not expecting. What I want to do is I want to go in and I want to change these definitions so that on the official Heir to the White City, in fact, let me pull up I have an actual, oh, I should have prepared a little bit better for this. Projects. I have a proposal that I put together that I've been, proposing it to me, right? It's not exactly something that other people are going to be interested in. But so what I want to do is I want to have this alternate section. And so rather than needing to create a new BS card, I just come in here and I say, okay, I have, in my little errata section, I have the PC errata version, and here is that card. You'll notice that it is so much shorter than the original because I shouldn't need to redefine all of the stuff like the strength and the title and all that garbage. That didn't change. We only changed one thing. We changed, how much Twilight it cost. And of course, there's a new image associated with it. I just want to be able to go in and make these very small changes that the system then understands. Okay, that is called the PC errata for this card, whatever that card is. And then I don't have to go in and have to keep a bunch of things straight. It just automatically takes care of it for me. This would also make promos so much easier to set up because those are a pain too. That I have to go into a bunch of different files and indicate that, yeah, this is a card that exists, but actually it's a copy word for word of this card, and this is the location it needs to be at. No. I just want to come in and add a new section saying, okay, here's the file path for it. So like for our Tangwar or for our Masterwork or for our full art cards or whatever, practically the only thing I have to do is come in here and give it a new URL. It may seem like I'm being lazy, but that is really kind of the essence of programming, is I want to make the computer do it instead of me having to deal with 5 different files every time I want to add a new card. This is something that does not look like much on the surface. Obviously, nothing will change in GEMP, nothing will change with anybody's actual usage of the game, but by making it so that adding errata and adding full art cards and so forth is easier, means that I don't have to waste time on that. And somebody comes in and says, okay, I got an errata, I can say, okay, cool, that's going to take 10 minutes for me to add instead of an hour. That would make it so that we can actually spend time on things that matter. Okay, next thing, email incorporation. So if you forget your password, you're SOL. You're out of luck. That sucks. That really sucks. On top of that, at the moment, it is easier to make an account than it is to ban it. That didn't used to be the case, but with the addition of the fact that we can now import decks, so I can come over. So in fact, I can just grab this whole thing here. I can go over here and I can say, okay, I'm going to import deck. Like, somebody who has been banned, so long as they have saved their decks, can very, very easily go in, create a new account, import one of their decks, and they're golden. It takes almost as long for us to look them up in the system and ban them as it does for them to set up a new account. And there are a couple of individuals that repeatedly like to come back, and it is annoying. So, at the intersection of those two problems, of being able to reset your password and actually being able to ban people properly, we need to have email accounts associated with these, or email addresses associated with these accounts. So that if you forget your password, you can go through the password recovery option, and when you go to create an account, you will have to actually associate an email with it, and until you authorize that email and actually prove that you own it, then your what you're able to do in GAMP would be restricted. And actually, this is something that I have thought about in regards to making it a little bit easier for people to get involved. Because right now, if you want to go check out GEMP, you have to register. There's nothing you can do about that. And for some people, that right there, like if someone passes them the link, they look at this, they're like, I'm not going to register for something that I have no idea what it is or how good it is or anything. I don't want to be passing in info that for something that I haven't vetted or figured out yet. So I would like to make it so that so that instead of a registration page here, that it's just click a link and you pass through, and it allows you in. It just restricts what you can do. So if you don't have an account that has been verified, you cannot chat and you cannot make games. I feel like that's reasonable. You would still be able to spectate, and I think that's the big thing, that I can pass a link to somebody and tell them, hey, come spectate this game and come look at how great Lord of the Rings is, without them needing to go through registration or do anything. You just pass it in and away you go. In fact, wouldn't it be nice to just be able to take this and share it on Facebook or whatever? I mean, right now you get this, and that kind of sucks. I'd like to be able to just show people games as they're happening, when trying to convert them to playing this game. There's lots of things that we can't do related to that because of stuff like that. So anyway, adding email accounts would allow us to do that safely, because otherwise, if we're not restricting what people can do, then it's just going to. I mean, some of these people go off, right? They get really mad when they get banned or whatever. And if there wasn't a restriction, then they would just come in and start spamming or doing whatever. So I'd like to make it so that they could still see, they could still get a taste of it. But unless you have an authorized email account, then you can't actually do anything. And then once you have done that, then you can go make decks. You can join. You can join and make tables. You can chat in here. And I think that would just overall improve our situation. And on top of that, it would make it so that banning people is a little bit easier, and a little more in our favor. Because now, if that new individual wants to create a new account, they have to go through the process of creating a brand new email account. There are services that make that easier to spoof, but if I notice a pattern, then I will just ban certain services from being allowed to be used as email addresses. And so that just gives us the tools, I think, to make this both a better experience for us trying to ban people, and a better experience for new players or potential players that have not yet converted. Work on profiling GEMP. So GEMP is actually kind of slow sometimes. When you have a lot of people in a lot of tables, when you have a lot of people connected to chat but not in tables, when you have a lot of people, or when you have somebody doing something complicated, even though it doesn't seem like it would be complicated, like opening packs is a ridiculous drain on the server's resources, and I have no idea why. So if somebody sits down and goes into the deck builder and starts opening up a bunch of packs, it is going to slow things down for everybody. There are some cards that, for whatever reason, take a lot of additional calculations, and again, I have no idea why. One of the reasons why I upgraded Java on the back end is because there are modern profiling tools that I can use. And so what a profiler is that it hooks into your program and then tells you what sections of code it's spending a lot of time in. So if I spin this up and then I see, oh hey, 25% of the server's time is being spent in this function, Well, then that does most of my work for me. All I got to do now is look into that function and find out why on earth is it spending all its time in this section. Is there a bug? Is there just like some efficiencies that I can add to it? Um, Doing that will overall just obviously that's good. It's not something that is very sexy, but it is it definitely needs to happen at some point. In addition, what I would like to do eventually to the architecture of GIMP is I would like to split it up into multiple instances, even for the same same server. So GIMP has multiple submodules within it. You have what's called the async submodule, which is basically the website itself, like the game hall and all that. You have cards, which is that holds the old non-JSON cards. Comment is an important images. Well, so Marston set up a thing that allows you to generate images, but we have the deck builder nowadays. And then you have the logic, which actually handles executing the rules and such. And then you have the server, which is what handles authentication of people signing in. It arranges the tables. It checks to see whether or not you're allowed to join or create or any of that. I would like to see most, if not all of these, separated onto their own instances, because there's no reason that if I go in to make an update to like the front end, I should not need to restart the server and all that just to change the way that the hall looks, right? So if all of these are on separate instances, then I can change them separately. For instance, if I were to go in and update a card definition, I should be able to just update logic and cards and async without touching any of the other stuff, which means that theoretically, mid-game, I could submit a fix to a card, like without interrupting any. I mean, obviously, it would stop for a moment while I restarted those individual services, but it wouldn't boot you out of your table or anything. You would just get a little message that said, "Oh, hey, server's updating right now. Just wait a moment, and then you can continue your game." That'd be pretty neat, I think. But again, just something that takes time to put together. And then as a whimsical answer, something else I could do, adding things like a card of the day functionality. Somebody talked about that because with the new rewrite, there's a lot of this empty space over here on the sides. And so people were talking about, what could we put there? A card of the day would be kind of an interesting thing to add to the just for discussion purposes. And then in some of the other Discord servers I've been on for other games, like the Middle Earth CCG, they have a bot that posts a card of the day in a discussion channel, and so something like that would just be nifty, I think, even if it's not ultimately all that impactful. So if you have ideas or opinions on what exactly I should be prioritizing, please let me know. Obviously, I will continue to do whatever I think is best, but what I do think is best does take into account what other people's opinions are. Okay, Nelson had to drop off a little while ago, so he's not here anymore. But that was this episode of Ketura Talks to Himself. So hopefully next time we have a meeting next month, ideally we will be able to have a few more people here to bounce off of me. But yeah, so as a quick recap, I will be diving into sealed thingies. That will be my next thing that I do after I finish up my current work on the admin pages for the UI rework. And then other than that, I mean, this is basically just, we got a bunch of stuff we got to talk about, bros. So give me your opinions, as detailed or as light as you like, on as many things as you can muster up the energy for. Until then, I guess I'll end the stream here. Good night, everybody.